it on Neto. He'll dance, he'll step, he'll shoot, and he hits it at the buzzer. No time left, and the Rockets have won the game.
2022 draft, the Houston Rockets select Jabari Smith Jr. from Auburn University.
Hey, Perk, you were right.
I love it. I love it. H-Town, stand up.
McDonald's All-American. He gets selected number 3 overall.
We are here to fuel your Rockets news. This is the Rockets Fuel podcast presented by Clutch Fans. I am one of your co-hosts, Lachard Binkley. Of course, you can always find me on Twitter at Binkley Hoops. And I just recently had an article come out for Dream Shake talking about the Rockets instantly improving their shooting and their overall defense. And of course, I'm joined by Dave Hardisty of Clutch Fans, who I would ask how you're doing, but I think I kind of know at this point how you're doing. But I guess we'll start with there. How are you feeling today?
Oh, yeah, I'm extremely tired. I got home like from that party around 1:30 over at Beam of Thugs place. And, Ben DuBose and Brienne Rocket Girl was there. And it was just a really good time. But I couldn't sleep. I mean, there was so much to catch up on. There was just so much. And I was just so excited. I think I dozed around 6:30, woke up around 9, and I've just been going ever since. I'm sure I'll crash hard this weekend, but it was, it's just such a thrill. I got to be 100% honest. I did not see this coming at all. There's no, I've never seen anything like this in the NBA draft, where everybody for a solid month is saying this is the guy. And Woj, the morning of, is saying this is the guy. I mean, I thought it was, you could take it to the bank. And, even the odds this morning had fixed a Vegas odds that, Banchero was you could have bet on Banchero and made a lot of money if you were to go that route. So it was a huge shock. And I just kind of kept my head down thinking, can this really be happening? Are the Rockets going to trade up for Paolo? What's going on here? I fell in love with Jabari's game in December when I really didn't even know much about him until November. But the Rockets got a really unique, in my opinion, prospect, a rare prospect, a guy who has this kind of work ethic, this kind of shooting ability at his size is extremely unique. There is no doubt for him to become sort of a major superstar. He's going to have to work on a weakness that you don't often see get developed once you get to the pros, and that's his ball handling and his shot creation ability. I should take that back. His shot creation ability is going to be just fine. His ability to cross up a guy and get to the basket and create for others, that's something he has to work on, and you don't see it develop very often. But the skills that he has and the build that he has, modern NBA to the T, great fit to the T. You have now 2 star players in him and Jalen Green with great work ethics. So to answer your question, how am I doing? I'm doing well. Really well.
I kind of figured that. And you mentioned about how it seemed like a foregone conclusion that he was going to be the number 1 pick. And even when, like you said, with Woj, he had mentioned it. And usually when Woj mentions something, it's pretty much set in concrete. He usually doesn't tweet anything unless he knows almost 100% sure. So much so that the Vegas line, before he came out with his tweet, the Vegas line had kind of shifted towards Paolo Banchero. But as soon as he came out with the tweet, it went back the other way. So that kind of lets you know how everybody feels about normally his, the intel that he has. But like you said, I mean, even from Banchero himself, he seemed shocked. He seemed like he didn't even know what was going on. And I mean, if the reports are true, he didn't even work out for Orlando. So I think everybody was, completely shocked. I remember, I think you had mentioned, a couple other people had mentioned when Rafael Stone was doing his press conference, that it seemed like he sort of knew what was going to happen. But at the same time, I think part of him had to be kind of surprised as well, because I don't think anybody really saw this coming except for probably Orlando. And honestly, I don't even see what Orlando is doing, because if the guy doesn't work out for you and you don't really do a lot, I mean, I'm sure they did their own background checks on things like that, but I mean, other than a phone call, it didn't seem like it was that much of communication between the two. So, yeah, it's definitely was a shock to a lot of people, especially the Banchero bandwagon people that were out there that really wanted Banchero.
Sure.
But I mean, just to kind of go into, why did you feel that Jabari Smith was the better option for the Rockets? Was it a matter of fit, or like you were just saying, do you see a path to where he can be a star, even with some of the limitations that he may have right now?
I do. As far as offense, I look at guys like Glenn Rice, LaMarcus Aldridge, Dirk Nowitzki. None of these are perfect comps, but I mean, just in their ability to create their own shot within, as far as a ranged shot. And I think he's going to have that kind of ability, and he's going to bring it on the other end of the floor as well. Yeah. When people bring up Kawhi or something like that, I don't think that's fair, because Kawhi is, a better creator. But a two-way player like Kawhi is what you hope to get out of him. And so I couldn't be more thrilled, at least, that the Rockets are taking this chance. And, for the people who wanted Paolo, I'll be honest, I'm not doing a victory lap here. I'll extend an olive branch, honestly, because, I know I've been there many times when you don't get the prospect that you want. It's not fun. And so I don't want to rub their nose in it. I mean, there are a few people that I'll probably pick out, but
we understand.
right. But for the most part, I'm just excited. I think all Rocket fans will come together, hopefully, at this point, and just enjoy him. I mean, if you want to be right, maybe you will be down the line. But I think as far as what the Rockets have in a prospect at his age, just turned 19, and Jalen Green is relatively fresh 20. There's just so much to be excited about. I mean, this pairing could be really great. You've got another pick coming up next year that could be really high. Things are just looking rosy for the Rockets. And I know it's been a tough 2 years, and you're going to add one more. That's probably going to be a little bit, more of a growing pains. But there's a lot to be excited about right now as a Rockets fan.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned about, sometimes not getting the prospect that you want. And this is kind of a public service announcement to everybody, that you should never go too far when you're backing one prospect over another, because you never actually know. And me personally, the last 2 years, the Rockets didn't draft the person that I actually wanted them to draft, but I never went too far one way or another where it was just hard for me to go back. Like I never last year was saying Jalen Green is going to be horrible. I don't know why they're going to draft him. I was always saying I'll be fine if they draft Jalen Green. I wanted Evan Mobley. Everybody know it wasn't a secret,
here.
But I was perfectly fine with them drafting Jalen Green. Same thing this year. I never, downgraded Jabari just to prop up Chet. I mean, it was never like that for me. So just everybody remember that next year. If the Rockets are in the top 5, please don't go overboard one way or another with every prospect, because we have no idea, except if they go number 1. I think, at least for now, I think we kind of know what that pick is going to be. But, I mean, outside of that, you really have no idea who can be number 2, who can be number 3. It could be any of the guys at that point. It could be Scoot Henderson. It could be the Thompson twins. I mean, who knows?
You're right. And just to add to that as well, I went through that pain. In other words, after the lottery results and it became clear and nothing was changing, there was no drama. I was like, okay, we're not getting the guy that I love. The guy that we're going to end up getting is the guy, that I felt was, 4th on my board. And so I knew I was getting some flack, but I had a whole month to I was ready for this. I
come to terms with it.
I prepared artwork. I mean, it was not like I was stewing and upset about getting Paolo Banchero. It was fact, and I was already ready for it. So, I for people who wanted Paolo, and then in an instant it's gone just before the draft. I honestly I feel for him. So but I think the Rockets, no matter which way it unfolded, because if you were following on Twitter, there was a brief 30-second moment where Chris Haynes said Jabari Smith's going too, and then he deleted that tweet. So we thought we were getting Chet, and we were celebrating that at Bima's draft party as well. So you couldn't lose. All 3 of those guys were really good. It's just unfortunate there were these little factions, I guess, and hopefully now everyone's gonna be cheering for the Rockets.
Yeah, I actually sent out a tweet earlier saying that, at least in the morning, it was the first time in a long time there was kind of just a kumbaya moment with Rockets fans, because it's kind of seemed like we thought we knew what was going to happen. And then after that, it kind of changed. After the draft, it kind of went back to normal. But at least for a brief several hours, we actually had some calm within Rockets Twitter. But I will say it hasn't been too bad today, at least, as far as, people being mad that we have Jabari Smith. I mean, it's been a few people, but it hasn't been anything crazy. So hopefully it stays that way when, I don't know, Jabari Smith goes out there and has a 3 for 15 game or something like that, which every rookie's going to have. I just don't want it to go the other way and say, well, see, that's why we should, trade it up and try to get Banchero. But I mean, I think at least for now, most people are calm anyway.
I agree. I think people are coming together. And I think the part of it just so you know, is like, because it was clear that we were going to get Banchero, you couldn't talk about other prospects because people would look at that like you're talking about guys who are going to be on the Thunder and Magic, and that was like viewed negatively. So it's a strange psychology to the whole thing. But now that there's actually a player who's going to be on the Rockets, and it doesn't matter which of the three it was, but we're all going to, I think, unite behind that player and pull for him.
Yeah, and it's exciting because honestly, I mean, if Banchero was drafted, I wouldn't even plan on doing a podcast today because we already had one Wednesday. We have another one tomorrow with Ben DeVos. But then when awesome. Jabari gets drafted, it's actually kind of exciting because it's stuff we hadn't been talking about for weeks and months. So it's definitely some, added layers to what you're able to talk about instead of, I mean, we've been talking about Banchero's game and how he fits with Şengün for a long time now. Yeah. So now we get to talk about Jabari, how he brings a whole different skill set. And actually, before we get too deep into his skill set and actual his actual stats, along with Tyree Eason and Ty Washington as well, who were other draft picks of the Rockets. How was it at the draft party, like right before the pick and then right after, everybody realized who the Rockets were picking?
So at 3 or at each one, I guess?
Oh, at 3, especially.
Sure. Well, at 3, it was like, people kept saying to me, hey, it looks like you're going to get your guy. And the way I'm built, I'm like, I refuse to believe something. If I've already had my hopes crushed and somebody starts giving me hope again, I'm like, no, it's not going to happen. I'm telling myself I'm not going that route again. Yeah. So, but the anticipation was building, and it was like, this is really happening. They're taking Paolo. Are they taking him for Houston? Yeah. Are they taking him for somebody else? But when it became clear, they wanted him to, on the Orlando Magic. I just was like, we're going to get Cheddar Jabari. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I know you've been a big Chet guy. And so that, that was interesting too, but it kind of, what was fascinating was OKC was taking Chet regardless. So
pretty much.
If for whatever reason, Orlando wanted to play games and wanted Jabari out of this thing, they really could have leveraged Houston. They could have, leapfrogged OKC and taken Paolo there and left, Jabari on the table for Orlando at 3. So, it's really a lot of games that were being played between 3 teams that have no excuse but to go BPA. And as far as at the party, we were just, ecstatic, and just everybody was really happy about the way it unfolded. And it continued at pick 17 and 26 to trade down to 29. It was like, and David Wiener, Beam a Thug, like, he's not a guy you see like, using much profanity or anything, but when he's really happy about the Rockets, he'll let it go. I'll just say that he was like, we nailed this thing. He was just
that was a sight.
Yes, it really was. And everybody there was really, really happy. And it looks like the reaction at the Rockets draft party was really positive as well.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at it, and that's kind of what I want to go into next. I mean, you get, of course, Jabari, but you always get Tyree Eason, who, he doesn't have the shooting pedigree of a Jabari, but he did improve tremendously from his freshman year to his sophomore year, going to getting up to 35% shooting. Of course, there's some concerns about his shooting motion and how would that translate to the NBA. But again, he is with a really, good situation with that, having a person like John Lucas, who, as we saw with KJ Martin, who was the same way. I mean, he was shooting under 30% when he first got in the league, and now he's at least to a respectable range to where he's not a liability when he's on the offensive end. And I think you kind of going to see the same thing with Tyree Eason. But kind of going back to Jabari, I mean, you're getting a 6'10" guy who shot, if I'm not mistaken, 42% from 24 feet and beyond, which is just kind of insane. That's, I mean, even further than the, NBA 3-point line. And another stat I saw, he, in the last 25 years, he made the most 3-pointers out of any guy 6'10" or taller. Now, of course, this is a little bit deceiving because Durant was 6'9" in college and he made a few more threes,
Sure.
but still, that's still impressive. I mean, to make that many threes at that size. So, I mean, you're getting improved scoring, you're getting improved defense. I mean, from day one, I mean, you have two switchable guys who can either play small forward or power forward. I mean, your defense from last year was dead last in points per game given up. So now you have two guys who are going to be above average to elite defensively. So, I mean, when you're looking at that, to me, that's like the biggest thing for me. I mean, of course, offense is always great. A lot of people look at offense, but to have two guys that want to play defense, I mean, that's something the Rockets sorely lack, especially if you're going to be getting rid of Eric Gordon at some point. You're going to need guys like that can actually go out there at 6'8", 6'10", that can actually guard multiple positions. So, I mean, when you're looking at that, what do you see from the defensive end, or what the things the Rockets are going to be able to do? And Coach Silas is actually going to have players that he can actually go out there and put out that can do different things, not just on offense, but on defense.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I mean, you don't have to look much farther than the NBA Finals to see, how the impact of lengthy wings and defense. I mean, number one, number two defensive teams, and I think it was 4 and 7 when you had the conference finalists as well.
Yeah.
So, I think they've got enormous potential. I think Rafael Stone is wanting to temper expectations. Like, hey, they're rookies. They're not going to plug right in and shut down, NBA guys right out of the gate.
Yeah.
They have that potential, though. Like, they have the potential over the next couple of years as the Rockets become good to be that kind of those kind of defensive players. And so to have that length, Tari Eason has, unique Kawhi-like size hands.
Yes.
Like, you don't see that very often. You see some of his defensive plays in transition, especially where he just, boom, just snatches the ball out of somebody's hands.
Yeah.
There's a lot to like. I think with Tari, he has the potential to be a truly elite defender. Rafael Stone said, I expect him to be one of the most switchable defenders in the league and that can guard 1 through 5. With him, it's where's his defensive IQ going to be? Is he going to understand switches and schemes and rotations, orchestrating a defense? I think that's a little bit of a growth area for him because he's got all the physical ability and point of attack and things of that nature, off-ball defense. But as far as understanding schemes and switches, I mean, Draymond Green is an elite defensive IQ guy where you could take a Harden Capella pick and roll and somehow defend both Harden and Capella on the it's truly amazing. So, you have hope for Tari Eason to be that kind of impactful defender. But we'll see. He's got, some learning to do, but the potential there with that pick, really on both sides of the ball. I think Tari, he's 80% free throw shooter, got to the line a tremendous amount. His free throw rate is really, really good. There's just a lot to like there as well, but he's going to have to work on his shooting form. You pointed out, and just a few other things, I think, to succeed in the league, but a lot to like with Tari Eason.
Yeah, I mean, and I was kind of actually listening to the spaces that you were just hosting right before you jumped on. And it's something that they mentioned that's a really good point that I always try to bring up, is that you can't always look at just their stats. You have to look at their situation in college. And a lot of time in college, especially with Jabari Smith, he had Kessler behind him that, he was able to funnel a lot of different things too. So he, even with a shot blocker and a good defensive center behind him, he still averaged over a block a game in under 30 minutes, along with over a steal a game. And the same thing with Tari Eason. He was able to average almost 2 steals a game. And as you pointed out, he didn't even start a majority of the games. He only started 4 games all season. So you got those two guys, and then also he averaged over a block a game. So you have 2 wing guys who are averaging over a block and a steal a game, and they both were doing it under 30 minutes a game. I mean, that's something that I can't remember the last time the Rockets had that type of, defensive wings, even in the PJ Tucker, and I'm comparing them to PJ Tucker and Bob Mute, those type of players. But even those type of players weren't the type of shot blockers that you're getting from those two. So, I mean, that's definitely unique in itself, having those two type of players that you're going to be able to eventually put in your starting lineup. But I want to ask you about Tari Eason before we get to Ty Washington. I want to ask you, do you see him starting more in the G League, maybe the first half of the season or first month of the season, and then eventually working his way in, or is that kind of dependent on what they do with Eric Gordon?
Well, that's a good point too. Let's see what happens with Eric Gordon.
Yeah.
I've been debating this. I definitely don't think he's a guy that you're going to see most of the season in the G League, but he may start there. I think if he comes into camp and they say, well, he's, he can make too much of an impact, then he may start right out of the gate. I mean, I remember the year where Chandler Parsons, and you had Marcus Morris, who was drafted higher than him, Donatas Motiunas, drafted higher than him. They both went to the G League, but Parsons, like in camp, impressed and was like, you're staying here. He never went to the G League. So I could see something like that if he comes into camp and plays such a significant defensive role. I also think when you send players to the G League, they kind of become, I don't want to say heliocentric, but they become so much of a all-around game there. Their role is significantly bigger than you want him to sort of develop in the NBA. I can see it happening, but I think what they're really going to be focusing on with him is just his understanding NBA defensive schemes, what they're trying to run, switching and all of that stuff, because he has so many good measurables and athleticism. So to answer your question, I'm on the fence, but I think it's possible that it could really go either way. But I don't think he'll be there for more than like a month. I don't think he's a guy who's going to be there all season like Knicks.
Yeah, and we saw that last year with Alperen Sengun. Was actually most of the reports coming into camp was that he was going to start off in the G League, but he did so much in his brief time in the summer league and in training camp that they just could not put him in the G League. He was just too good. So I think that could be a same thing that happens with Eason. And then also same thing with Josh Christopher. He was only there for like 4 or 5 games, and then he was already back with the Rockets, and he never looked back. And like you said, that could be the same thing that happened with Eason. Now, moving on to Ty Washington, he may be somebody that may spend a little bit more time in the G League, just because you still do have Daishen Nix. I know a lot of people are already kind of slotting in Washington as a backup point guard, but you still have Nix, and they still value what Nix brings to the table. So when they drafted Ty Washington, what was kind of your feeling on that? Because, I mean, I know a lot of people remember him from the tournament last year. I mean, he's a 6'3", 6'4" guard that he's really more of a point guard, even though he played off ball at Kentucky because they already had their starting point guard. But the few times that he did play full-time point guard when they had injuries, I mean, he broke the assist record that John Wall had there for a long time at Kentucky. He showed that he does have playmaking skills. He has a great runner. That he can get to the basket, a good teardrop. He's still he's not super athletic. He doesn't have super size. He's actually kind of came in under 200 pounds. But what do you kind of see that Ty Washington can bring to the Rockets, and where do you see him kind of fitting with the Rockets to start the season?
Well, if he hits, like if he becomes what we expect him to be, he's got the potential to be like a really good, I don't want to say tailor-made, but pretty close fit next to Jalen Green as far as the ideal type of point guard where he can distribute. As you pointed out, he has 17 assists one game. He as well can shoot. He can play off ball. He can knock down shots. He's got potential, in my opinion, to be a 3-level scorer where, getting at the basket though is the issue. You nailed it. He's not super athletic. The rim pressure is a question with him. I think it was kind of that way with Darius Garland, although Garland was more of a lights out shooter. But I just see some potential there in him. This is a guy who was a very high prospect, went to Kentucky with a lot of fanfare. There's really good upside here. And now if he goes to the G League, and I agree with you, that's possible as well. Interesting if he and Nix are both there. I mean, I'm thinking Nix is going to come in, play some backup point guard minutes here, in Houston. But I'm curious how they balance that. But I love this pick. At the party, we were at, the Rockets were at 26, and we were like, it's going to be between Jaden Hardy and Ty Washington. And we were like, either one's going to be such a great pick. And then they trade the pick. Pick up 2 good second-round picks, the 2025 Minnesota, 2027 Minnesota second-round pick, and move to 29, and we're like, well, maybe one of those guys will be available. Turns out both of them are still there.
Yeah.
and they take Ty, and you're just like, wow. That's one of the guys we would have taken at 26 anyway. He was 20th on my board. I love that pick at 29, and to get that, after moving Christian Wood's salary and to pick up Ty Washington as an extra, I love that trade. I just think it's for a rebuilding team, it's a really good swing, cut at the plate, if you will.
Yeah, because if you look at it, if you go back and look at kind of the preseason reports or before the college season started, Ty Washington was in a lot of mock drafts. He was in the lottery projected. And then he had the slow start. He dealt with an ankle injury. Like I said, he played a lot off ball, so you didn't see him being able to, be the facilitator that he possibly could end up being in the NBA. So that's where he kind of fell off and kind of fell down the draft boards. But I mean, he has the talent. He was a 5-star recruit going into Kentucky.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I mean, as much as I like Daishen Nix, and I do like Daishen Nix, I mean, it's going to be a real battle for that backup spot because they're kind of similar as far as facilitators, but I would say that Ty Washington is more of a natural scorer than Daishen Nix is. Daishen Nix probably more of a natural facilitator. So it's going to be really interesting. And I agree with you. I think that he's probably going to Nix will probably start with the Rockets. He'll probably play most of the season with the Rockets. I don't see him going back and forth to the G League this year just because he was just too good for the G League last year. I mean, we kind of saw that in the G League championship. But it's going to be real interesting as the season goes on to see maybe Ty Washington starts to eat into some of his backup minutes. So I think that's probably going to be one of the more interesting position battles out of all of them when it comes to the Rockets next year.
Yeah, and you make a great point, Lachard, in that there's going to be a battle between those two as far as like who's developing faster or who can make more of an impact. And the Rockets need that with 1 year left before KPJ needs to resign. And I don't mean to keep questioning KPJ, but because he's on a good track and he's doing well, and knock on wood, things have been smooth. But you do need some insurance if that does not go right or he's not in the long-term plans. And so to develop 2 point guards that you like, that you think are at least worthy of mid-level first-round picks, there's just a lot to be happy about there. And even if either one of those guys end up being a very good backup point guard, that's a significant player as well. Maybe the Rockets add a point guard as a free agent or as in a trade in a year. But Ty, in my opinion, and possibly Nix, have the potential to be starting point guards in the league if they continue to grow. So, yes, love that pick.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't think the Rockets are at a point where, outside of Jalen Green, where they should be holding back one player because they already have that player on their roster. I mean, I don't really see – I mean, like I said, I like Daishen Nix. I followed him all year. I think he can be a really good player, but I agree with the Rockets that you still draft the best player, especially at 29. I mean, you see what you get if they both have the chance to battle it out. And that's kind of why, if the reports are true, why I was kind of disappointed with the news about KJ is because I feel like he should want to come in and compete with Jae'Sean Tate or whoever they bring in the draft. Like I said, we don't know 100% sure how true all the rumors are, but I mean, Kelly Iko is not really the type of person that's going to come out with information unless he, has verified sources. So,
sure.
I mean, that's why I'm was disappointed in hearing that news. I feel like KJ should want to compete for that position because there's really no set positions outside of Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun in the starting lineup, and now Jabari Smith. So I just wanted to see what he would do with that. But yeah, I agree. It's going to be a real battle with that backup position. So just overall, how do you feel going into next year compared to how you felt maybe 48 hours ago?
Oh, I mean, I think I would have felt really good regardless. Like even if it was Paolo, I would have been like, hey, let's roll with Paolo. This could be, this could be fun. But yeah, no, I'm feeling better than I did, even if it had been Paolo, because I'm excited. I got to be honest. It was unfair, but I'm sitting there thinking to myself, do the Rockets value defense at all? I mean, to be dead last is no big deal. I mean, it's not a big deal when you're rebuilding, so I'm not knocking them for being last there. But like the prospects that they're bringing in aren't necessarily known for their defense. I mean, Garuba, yes, we haven't seen much from him, but the other guys have some definitely potential defensively. I'm impressed with Jalen Green, but like they've definitely been swinging upside. Even Christian Wood was a really special offensive player who has defensive weaknesses. Now they bring in 2 blue chippers, in my opinion, that are good defensively, if not potential elite defensive players. And Ty Washington is a good defensive player. He's got
average.
and so he's got some skills there as well. So I really got a lot of respect for Fellstone, Patrick Fertitta, Eli White, the front office. Just they had, in my opinion, an A+ draft. I know I'm a Rockets fan, I'm biased, but I feel like if they, if I didn't like some of those guys, I would say it. And I just think they really nailed all 3 of those.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just Rockets fans saying this. I mean, everywhere I've been listening, everybody's been giving the Rockets, they usually do the winners loser type thing, and everybody's been saying the Rockets have been definitely a winner in this draft. I mean, everybody, of course, Jabari Smith was the pick, but he kind of fell into their lap. But everybody loved the Tari Eason pick. They love taking a swing with Ty Washington. So it's not just Rockets fans. There's a lot of different people that think the Rockets had a really good draft. I know you probably have to run here pretty soon because I know they probably have a press conference here in a few minutes. But
Sure.
I want to get your opinion real quickly on Eric Gordon. Do you see him being on the roster when the season starts, or do you kind of just see this playing out? Because, again, he's kind of the key to minutes when it comes to how the Rockets are going to do with their wing players and, just even their backcourt. So do you see them kind of dragging this into the season and kind of just waiting maybe too closer to the trade deadline?
If they don't get the future pick offer, I do. And of course, it has to be a future pick now, right? I mean, unless somebody's trading a prospect or something, they can't get a 2022 pick and make a selection in 48 hours. So they're in a good spot. I still think you have to look at teams like Phoenix for sure. I would have said Minnesota. That's still a possibility with Malik Beasley in that salary situation.
Yeah,
they need a future first round pick for Eric Gordon, and if they can get it, I think they will deal him. The question is, what vets can they bring in, or vet that is just respected and can help lead some of these young guys like Eric Gordon has. He's not ideal, but he's been good for them, and they all respect him and really love playing with him. So that's going to be a question if they do trade Gordon, but I think it's just a matter of getting that future first. Obviously, they could have traded him to Daryl Morey for the 23rd pick yesterday. I mean, it's Daryl wanted that trade. There's no doubt about that. But the Rockets didn't want it, and they didn't want the 23rd pick of this draft. They want a future first. If they get it, and it's a solid first round pick, they'll pull the trigger.
Yeah, I think that's what people just need to remember when they wonder why Gordon wasn't traded last year or this year. I just don't think the Rockets wanted more picks, especially at that particular point. Now, of course, they did end up bringing Ty Washington, but I just don't think they wanted that 23rd pick. I'm gonna definitely go ahead and let you run. I know you're not gonna say it's a victory lap, but I'm gonna say it's a victory lap for you. So I'm excited. I love defense. I look at defense as the number one way that a rebuilding team gets out of rebuilding. So I'm excited for the pick. I'm excited to see where they go with it. So the next interesting thing is going to be, like you said, do they bring in a vet during free agency that's fine with coming off the bench or not playing at all at some point? So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what's coming up. And, again, I appreciate you jumping on because I know you've been everywhere today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. And I like the way you worded that about getting out of the rebuild. So, yeah, anytime, Lachard, it's always a pleasure to come on Rocket Fuel.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's going to do it for today, but we have another show come up tomorrow with Mr. Ben DeBoe, so we definitely get his opinion on everything. Mr. Anthony Duck will be on with me tomorrow, so make sure you check that out. And we always appreciate everybody that comes on and join us here on Rocket Fuel, presented